93 KHJ,
Los Angeles.
you think the people would have had enough of silly love songs? We're gonna get high, high, high with the music on. You are the river, I am the stream. Flow, mighty river. Little luck, with a little luck, with a little luck, a little luck, a little luck. When will you see me, my salamander? Don't say it, don't say it. You can say anything, but don't say goodnight tonight, night, night.
93 KHJ presents The Wings Special. 2 hours with Paul and Linda McCartney, the rest of the current Wings lineup, and their award-winning music.
When a master musician like Paul McCartney decides it's time for a change, you know it's going to be exciting, adventurous, and a totally unique musical experience.
For the band on the run, band on the run.
When a composer and performer with a proven track record of Paul McCartney feels the need to branch out into new musical areas, you know you'll be hearing recorded sound like you've never heard it before.
For the band on the run, band on the run.
And when a rock and roll legend like Paul McCartney wants to open up about this ongoing change and evolving musical style in a relaxed session of questions, answers, jokes, and thoughtful reflection, you know you'll be closer to Paul McCartney than you've ever come. Paul McCartney and Wings, their words and music.
Every day she takes a morning bath, she wets her hair, wraps a towel around her as she's heading for the bedroom chair. It's just another day. It's just another day. It's just another day.
In books about me, I've never yet read any one book that kind of tells the truth. Because even like there's one called The Official Autobiography of the Beatles by Hunter Davis, where he came round and sat us all down and talked to us and got all our recollections, and he's got most of it there. But it's still not quite right, and I couldn't tell you what isn't right about it, but it still doesn't capture the real feeling that went on. Although it does, like, that probably does the best job of all of them. But there's a book by Alan Williams, and he's just got us as the biggest lunatics on earth, you know, doing all crazy things like, and okay, we were crazy, but not in the way he described it. I mean, the thing about Alan, anyway, he drove us over to Hamburg, and then he left. So I don't know where he got the story from, you know, he must have got it at least third hand. But he's a good lad, you know, I can't blame him. He wants to write a book, you know, he's a good little fella. They just pick up one little angle and they play that up, you know. And of course, just to the left and to the right of that angle is the real story.
Whatever really happened in the past, the musical reality of the 1980s is upon us. Paul McCartney plans to face the next decade with his band Wings and their tight new lineup, along with a familiar face or two from previous Wings albums.
We started the group about a year ago with the new lineup with Steve and Lawrence, and we already had Denny, Linda and myself. We could have gone out then, but we would have had to do the old lineup's material. So it would have meant for Steve and Lawrence that they were having to play other people's parts, which is a bit of a drag, really, because they feel a bit... I mean, I'd feel sorry for them, really, if they just had to play other people's creations.
I love all the songs, so I play them, you know. But the only thing is like going out that soon, after that, it was still in the air, then I would literally have had to gone out playing kind of like the way Joe would play, and I don't play the same way as he does, so I think like all the material we just got, like, you just got to shake it around. The songs are still there, but I'd like to be able to have the time to inject my own style into it.
The thing about Lawrence and Steve is that they can play anything. I mean, probably if you had to put it in a nutshell, probably, like he says, you know, English backbeat is probably
But it's more, a little bit more than that. It's more involved because, like, I've been through 1,000,001 different styles of music from the time I started. You know, I was sort of like brought up in big band jazz with my folks, and the first band I went to was like a heavy metal rock band. You know, it was the first thing I ever did professionally. And since that, I've done like folk groups and reggae bands, and worked with like Jimmy Cliff's backing band, and just like so many different styles that you take in a lot, and it comes out your way.
Well said.
I did it my way.
Wings' new drummer, Steve Hawley, was practically hand-picked by longtime Wings member Denny Lane.
Steve happens to be a neighbour of mine. I've known him for about 3 or 4 years before the group, and I got him the job. No, it's, you know, I knew him, I played with him, introduced him to Paul.
Paul's rubbish?
Lawrence, I met on the David Essex show, which is a TV show, and that's how that came together.
Yeah, well, when I first met him, you know, he was cleaning my guitar strings. And I said, you know, that's enough of that, kid. You know, and he said, no, please, sir, let me do some more. I said, look, son, if you got some energy, do my boots. Well, after he'd done my boots, you know, I sort of realised I was some kind of hero of the lads. And I asked him to join the group.
Paul, Linda, Denny, Steve, and additional new Wings recruit Lawrence Juber have more in common than the time they share in the studio or on stage.
Now, I've had the same sort of heroes as Paul, like Buddy Holly, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry. You know, they were then. I don't think these days I sort of have that many heroes, because I've met most of them. They don't come up to it a lot of the time. Well, yes and no. You know, but I don't find myself having that many heroes these days. Yeah, I mean, if I see somebody playing good one night, you know, he's my hero for a bit until he starts going over the top, you know, or not.
The era's slightly different, really, to like Paul and Denny, because like I'm about, I suppose, about 10 years behind to some extent, you know. So.
It's a nice way of putting it.
Well, it is, you know, and I just like a lot of music, an awful lot of music, and I grew up with the Shadows and the Beatles, and you know, and Chuck Berry. I hooked on to very young and stuff like that, and now I think, well, I just enjoy an awful lot of music.
When I grew up, I think Paul was like one of my big heroes, you know.
Oh, now look at your chance now.
I'm just trying to get a raise.
No chance. No.
Oh, well, in that case.
In that case, it was George.
But I think it's just down to like anybody good, like Denny was saying. I mean, there's a lot of people that I like, and I couldn't just sit here and list them all because there's just too many people. And you know, sometimes you walk down the street and there's somebody busking. It's just so good that, you know, it takes you away. So that's really it. You know, anybody that turns me on.
Paul McCartney talks about his philosophy of disco on the KHJ Wings special.
Well, most groups, you know, when they're on tour, it's like that. I think with most groups, you know, there's always like a close feeling because you're stuck with each other for a couple of months. We get sick of each other, yeah, definitely. This is why we have weekends off. But we don't get, I mean, we haven't had any big sort of, you know, real dramas like some groups have, you know, where they won't speak to each other, or so-and-so's holidaying in Acapulco and won't come back. We don't have any of that. It's a pretty steady lineup we got at the moment. Everyone seems to like playing music, and we don't have too many personality problems, you know. We get on quite well. On Back to the Egg, we've got some tracks which we call rockestra, which is like orchestra only with rock instruments. And we used people like Dave Gilmour, Pete Townsend, Hank Marvin, and John Bonham of Zeppelin, Kenny Jones of The Who, to name but a few, you know, and our band. And we got together a big bunch of people. And that was that. Thank you, and good night.
Don't get too tired for love. Don't let it end. Don't say goodnight to love. It may never be the same again. Don't say it. Don't say it. Say anything. Don't say goodnight tonight. Don't say it. Don't say it. Say anything. Don't say goodnight tonight. Don't say it. Don't say it. You can say anything, but don't say goodnight tonight.
The thing is, the reason why we haven't put it on the album, although the record company has asked us to, over here and in America, is that we didn't think it really fitted with the album. And we'd taken up all the time on the album, and to put the full version on would have meant we'd have to put 7 more minutes on the thing. So we didn't feel like that it really fitted in with the style of music that's on Back to the Egg. It's a slightly different buzz, the whole thing. It was all done at a different time. And so we decided not to include it. So I hope you don't mind.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Say anything. Don't say goodnight. Don't say it. Don't say it. Say anything, but don't say goodnight tonight.
We just made Back to the Egg as a thing.
Oh no.
It was all a certain bunch of songs, it was a certain feeling, it was a certain bunch of sessions. And Good Night Tonight was made as a separate thing, so that we just felt separate about it. So when we came to put the album together, we just thought, well, we'll put that on. And so some record people lost a lot of hair.
Don't get too tired for love. Don't let it end. Don't say it. Don't say goodnight, love. Don't say goodnight. It's a feeling that may never end. Don't say goodnight.
When I was writing Good Night Tonight, I was just basically trying to write a dance record. Used to call it waltzing, and now they call it disco. You know, it's the same buzz. But for me, I would call it a disco record because I wrote it after having been to a disco one night. And I listened to all of what was going down, and I like it, and kind of went away with that kind of thing in my mind. And when I happened to write that particular tune, I was thinking of dance records. People sort of slag disco off because they say, oh, it sounds all like the same thing. It's like they used to say about rock and roll. It's all the same record, isn't it? You know, say, no, it isn't. Listen, that's Chuck Berry and that's Elvis. Can't you tell the difference? No. You know, they can have... It's like they say about reggae. Oh, it all sounds the same, doesn't it? Or disco. Oh, it's the same tune played again. But I mean, if you think like that, it just means you don't listen to it, you know, because it's the same style, but all very different songs. I think in any kind of thing, disco, reggae, old rock and roll, ballads, anything, I think you've got to have a basic idea. If that idea is good, then it's pretty hard to make a bad record of it. But the idea has to be really good. It has to inspire people, because that's where all the juices come from then.
You think that people would have had enough of silly love songs? What's wrong with that?
We'll find out how and where The McCartneys and Band recorded Back to the Egg when the Wings special continues on KHJ.
The tags that people put onto things. We started off with the Beatles, you know, and we just thought we were playing rock and roll. And some journalist came up and said, well, this is the River Mersey. Let's call it Mersey Beat. And we said, oh no, please don't, because that's horrible. Don't call it that. And of course, he did, and it stuck, you know. And then you play disco, and people say, oh, that's disco. I mean, sometimes the tags work, you know. There are some people who are just disco, so you can apply it. But with a band like ours, we're not just any one type. I mean, round about Christmas last year, you would have had to call us a waltz group, a Scottish bagpipe waltz group, because that's what we were doing then. You know, then the last single, Good Night Tonight, you would have had to call us a South American rhythm group or something, you know. So I don't think we bother about the tags, really. I don't think it's harmful. It's just journalists trying to make a living.
Well, we were after a man who was apparently had been doing something like this.
Well, I listen to radio mainly in the car myself, you know, when I'm driving around. I flick on the radio and listen, sort around, try and find a good station. I've always done it that way, you know. It's the main place I listen to radio, really, is that. Except when I'm doing my ironing. The idea of the Back to the Egg thing was that it was originally going to be when you're in a car and you're trying to tune the stations. I don't know if you have the same thing in America as we do over here, but over here, like, sometimes you'll get the French and German stations coming in real loud, and the British stations, which is about 200 yards down the road, comes in sounding like it's coming from Australia or somewhere. You know, there's something to do with the transmitters. You know, typically UK, you know, but you pick up the Berlin Symphony coming in loud and strong from Berlin, you know, and you can't pick up, you know, Capital or BBC. So it was based on that idea of trying to find a radio station and you get four others at the same time. So the intro of that was to do with the radio thing.
Say you don't love him.
Basically, in the end, it comes down to whether you've got good songs or not, in truth. And you can do them in the studio just as well as you can do them in a castle. But having got the songs together, then you can record anywhere. And a lot of people these days are kind of trying that out, you know. Particularly, like, a lot of people actually with less money who can't afford the real big studios. They're taking crummy equipment down to just a little basement or a little room, and they record there. And sometimes you can get better sounds than you can in a big studio. Like all the old blues records, the old rock records, are all made in little Sun studios here, or a little studio in Lubbock.
Cockatoo.
Or, you know, so it's really doing that. It's a bit Back to the Egg.
Even the world's most dedicated musicians need a break from studio sessions. And when it's impossible to leave the studio behind, Paul McCartney and Wings have found a way to carry it with them.
What we used to do was we used to record in studios all the time, like everyone does, like Good Boys. But we just got fed up with it one day, and we just thought, well, if we could record out in the back garden or out in a barn we know, or out on a boat somewhere, it'd be great if we could do it. But we thought, like most other people, that you can't do that kind of thing because it's too expensive and ridiculous. But actually it works out about the same as normal studio costs and everything. This record, Back to the Egg, to get away from it and to make a change, we recorded in this old castle in Kent, which is where, like, Thomas à Becket and all the old monks and all the old archbishops of Canterbury all used to live in the old days, you know. So it's got a great history to it, and the vibes are sort of different than a normal studio. So when you go in there, it sort of tweaks you up a bit, you know, and your imagination gets a little bit freer.
George Martin was McCartney's first producer. Paul discusses his only other producer in the next segment of the KHJ Wings special, coming up after this.
Besides being the very first effort from Paul McCartney's new improved Wings, Back to the Egg marks the first time McCartney has worked with a co-producer since heading into the studio with George Martin. This time around, it's Chris Thomas.
Chris Thomas, who co-produced this album. He was doing some other work for us on a film.
The week.
On a film. And we were going to make this record in Scotland, and we said, do you fancy coming? You know, he's a good lad, and he's got a good ear, which is left one.
A definite characteristic of almost all Wings music to date is the natural blend when it comes to the harmony of Paul and Linda McCartney.
With Linda and me singing harmonies, it's just a question of like, it just happens to sound like it sounds, you know, it's nothing we worked on. When she sings, it just seems to blend a bit.
American tour helped a lot because we did so many shows that after a while it just became very easy. But at first I got criticized a lot for if I sang flat or, you know, being a bit amateur. But in truth, a lot of the music I like in England is a little bit off or a bit unprofessional, not that advanced. So I started thinking, well, it's all right.
During the American tour, Linda got as professional as she needs to get. Like, you know, you don't need to get too professional in rock and roll, or else it's not rock and roll anymore.
She tastes like wine. She's a human being so divine. Oh, she feels like sun. Mother Nature, look at what you've done.
Some other people have said, you know, the last thing they do is to take their old lady on the stage with them. You know, it's just a bit of a crazy situation. But when we were forming the group the first time, the Wings, I just said to her, you know, do you fancy it, or would it be too much and stuff? And she said she fancied it. She'd really get sort of worked up. But I mean, there was only a couple of times that I beat her about the head a few times and sent her on.
Because I really couldn't play very well. and sort of be playing with real musicians. It's a bit of a hang-up for them. Well, you know, I mean, I had fun all the time, mind you. It was a good laugh. I started feeling comfortable after I'd done it a few times. Once I started knowing what I was doing.
I mean, you know, when you think about it, like most people who come into the music business come into it kind of for the fun of it. And everyone starts off not knowing much, you know.
Still don't know.
Anyone you can name, you know, has to learn somewhere. So with Linda's thing, it was just difficult at first, but like she just started to kind of just
I love it now. I love it with this group, especially because they seem to like what I do. They don't resent it, I don't think.
No, they don't resent it.
The McCartneys on children and family life, coming up in the next segment of the Wings Special on KHJ.
After Wings puts the finishing touches on a new album or plays the final encore of the evening, Paul and Linda McCartney drop the rock and roll concerns for a while to get wrapped up in family life.
We see the kids like as much as most people do, probably a bit more than your average 9-to-5 workers. And so we keep it balanced that way, you know, and we have to go home to beat the kids up, of course. Keep them in line.
That's right. You
quick
tell them.
Cuff around the ear. Quick cuffs. This is the... No, I'm only kidding, really. What we do is we try and balance it out, you know, between working and the family. And we work just like most people do, you know, put in a bit of work, and then we have a lot of time off. They're good kids. They're fine. And we try and keep them out of the business. They're big enough hands as it is. We don't take them on the road. No, we try and leave them on the road. We'll get a few miles on the motorway. Say, out, kids. And that's... But they somehow seem to keep catching us up at gigs. No, this is the bluffing British sense of humour.
This is the story of a boy named Ted. If his mother said Ted be good, he would.
The main thing, like the only thing that we know about bringing up kids is...
Tranquilizers.
is, you know, giving them attention is the main thing. You know, that's what kids want, you know, is like somebody to watch what they're doing and someone to love them. And so, you know, we just try and sort of be with them when they need us and stuff.
And I remember when I was real trouble for my parents, so I can understand, you know, different phases you go through as a human being. So you just remember yourself and you just think, well, time just takes care of everything, unless it's dangerous, you know, and then that's why I think parents are there, because it's dangerous. But I think fads and just things that are a bit outrageous, but they're not harmful, I think they're all right.
We're so sorry.
They know what's going on, like anyone knows, you know, but, and they have to put up with a little bit here and there about, you know, having famous parents. But we don't really do it like a lot of famous people do, which is very upfront and very sort of trying to take the kids and involve them in our lifestyle and stuff. They keep pretty straight, you know, our kids. We're just growing up pretty much like ordinary kids, except they've got us for parents.
Paul McCartney discusses the pains of following the Beatles with a new band in the second hour of the Wings Special when we continue on KHJ.
The rhythm of Southern California.
93 KHJ.
Los Angeles. Picturing the McCartneys as a typical stay-at-home family that watches television at night, it's hard to conjure up the image of hardcore rock musicians sweating it out on stage. But throughout this frantic double life, Paul and Linda McCartney have managed to keep their relationship stronger than ever.
What is it for us? We don't know yet. I haven't been able to work it out for the last 10 years, but the thing is, if it seems to work, you don't knock it, you know. I don't know, really. You know, the thing is, like, when you talk to people, people ask you about your marriage and stuff. It always comes out sounding like a fairy tale romance and stuff. But like anyone who's got a relationship with another person, you have your ups and downs, you know. But I mean, I couldn't tell anyone how to do it, because we're still trying to work out how to do it ourselves.
And in the end, the love you take
The breakup of the Beatles, the group responsible for bringing new meaning to popular and rock music around the world, obviously did affect the McCartneys.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing was, like, when we were trying to start Wings, it was a bit of a headache because you were following in the footsteps, or I was anyway, following in the footsteps of like a very famous group, you know, the Beatles. But they'd split up, so there's nothing I could really do about it, except start a new one. So we started a new one, and at the very first, there was a lot of people saying, oh, you know, it's silly to even try and top the Beatles. But one of the great things that did start happening was that as we got on with it and started doing it, you started discovering like younger fans who were saying those kind of things, like, you know, oh, Wings, you know. And so it did give us a lot of encouragement, like, to think, because at one point I would have never believed that anyone in the world could disassociate me from the Beatles.
What does she get for all the love she gave you?
Elvis Presley and his influence are part of McCartney's thoughts in the next segment coming right up on the Wings Special from KHJ.
The past decade on the international music scene has been filled with more than just the usual share of band breakups or overhauls. For a number of never-to-be-forgotten rock and rollers, it meant an unfortunate end.
We talk about someone like Keith Moon.
Sex and drugs and
good
rock
mate
and
of
roll.
ours. He probably would have just been here looning as usual, you know. But, like, he was a great fella, you know. But I say, if he'd have been here now, he would have been just laughing and joking. I don't suppose he'd like anyone to just start taking him seriously, because it's the last thing they ever did while he was alive, you know. It's a bit the same with Jimi Hendrix or something like that, you know, who's like another mate. They were great, you know. They got burned out via various things, you know. But they were great people, you know. I just like to remember them for what they were. I mean, for me, he was the all-time guitar player, Jimmy. But, you know, I mean, the thing is, you know, they go to where all good rock and rollers go. One thing people don't seem to notice about Elvis, he was like one of the world's greatest vocalists. Everyone thinks, oh, well, he was a star, he wore all those sequins, you know, he got fat and he did all that. And
Still sang great through it all.
But, I mean, you listen to a record like Jailhouse Rock, and, I mean, he's a pretty amazing vocalist. He was always one of my favourite songs. So, I mean, I just like to remember him like that, you know. I don't particularly get into the fact that he's dead. For me, he's sort of still alive.
McCartney insists that mourning the passing of rock and roll legends or looking back too hard at past musical accomplishments is the wrong direction to take. Instead, a band has to concentrate on what's really important now. The songs and the sound.
I don't want to be the little woman again and again and again and again and again
Everything you do is pretty much tailored for some kind of audience, but you don't tailor it for critics. You tailor it for... I mean, the only thing I ever do when I write a song is I just think now, if I was buying records now, what would I like to hear? You know, and that kind of gets me into a song. I think I'd like to hear something like this, and then try and write it. We're not the commentators. We're not the people who look at the thing and analyze it and talk about it and try and bring the truth to people. We just make the music. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter, like, who's in power in the government. I mean, I think even during Nixon there was great music knocking around.
Someone knocking at the door.
Paul McCartney philosophizes about the mixture of rock and big business as the Wings Special continues on KHJ.
A lot of complaints have been cropping up recently, both within the music industry and among its critics, on the strange relationship of big business and rock and roll.
People from time to time talk about the music business and say, oh, it's not very healthy now, or there's not as good at music as when I was a kid or something. But I think it's always pretty good. You know, it has its bad moments like anything, but it seems to me very healthy at the moment. Millions of great new acts coming out, great new songs, you know. Can't complain.
How about record company control over musical creativity? Does that enter into the picture at all with a superstar group like Wings? A group that recently commanded a breakthrough multi-million-dollar contract?
You're in a group and you make music. It doesn't matter what the record people do. I mean, the thing is, when I started off in it, records weren't that big an affair because people didn't sell a lot of albums, really. As things progressed, albums started to be really big money earners for people, so the business grew. But we don't get involved in that end of it. We just make the music, and if it goes, it goes.
Besides recent record company contract deals, Paul McCartney has been getting into another money-minded area of interest.
When you make some money, you know, you have to either pay it over in tax or you've got to do something with it. That's the thing governments kind of force you to do, you know. So with my stuff, like, I could either go and do stuff that was not connected with me, like some people do. You know, they get a factory over here that makes brushes or something, you know, and they sort of get involved in that as a tax thing. But I was asked what I wanted to get into, and I just said, well, you know, I'd like to keep it as near music as possible. And I was asked who I liked, and I said, well, I like Buddy Holly. And what happened was, he was very lucky, really, because his publishing company was being sold in New York, and our business people in New York, who happens to be Linda's dad, said, well, he thought it would be a good thing to do, you know. So I took his advice, like, and we did it. And it's amazing, because it means, like, it's a business thing, and yet, for me, it isn't really, you know, because it's just like a great hobby. And it's just amazing to see how it's gone on since we got it.
That'll be the day when you say goodbye. If you knew Peggy Sue, then you know why I, my love, all of my kissing, you don't know what you've been missing, oh boy.
Buddy Holly's music is a long-time favorite of McCartney's. The last couple of years have seen an especially strong surge of Holly songs hitting the market, covered by today's top artists.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Why does our love just stay in my memory? It's so easy to fall in love. It's so easy to fall in love.
Along with the sudden popularity comes the interest in background and detail. And that's not too easy for anyone other than the artist who lived through the music to recreate the music.
It's weird, because there's only 4 people who know what went on in the Beatles. Even no matter how close you were to the thing, the minute you weren't actually part of the 4 people who were going through it, you can't know really, because there's so much just happens off the camera or off the microphone, which is all the real stuff, you know. So unless the 4 people sit down, or unless Buddy Holly was able, before he died, to like sit down and write his story, unless it comes exactly from the horse's mouth, they're always a bit wrong, you know, because there's always the scriptwriter's license.
When you were young.
Rather than give someone outside of Wings the chance to play around and possibly scramble some important script details, McCartney and Wings have their own venture into the world of film planned.
Well, we're doing, instead of kind of having a film about historical thing about what's happening, we're working on a script at the moment with, which is like a sort of acting film where we play something close to what we are, you know, which is like a band on the run. I think it's going to be called Band on the Run. It's very much about what we are, but it's fiction, you know. But it's an acting film for us. So that's something we probably will be getting into this autumn, I think. We were planning it for this autumn, which that would be a laugh, you know, to do. But I think the minute you try and say very exactly what someone's life was about, whether it's the Beatles, Buddy Holly, Glenn Miller, Red Nichols, or any of them, Lead Belly, there's always someone who'll come up and say, wait a minute, I knew the guy, he never talked like that at all. oh, he never did that song, so-and-so wrote it, you know, and there's always the real story lurking behind the film story.
With everyone in the band contributing recording and songwriting ideas, can the meaning of a McCartney song somehow get mixed up? Paul says that part of a tune isn't necessarily there in the first place.
See, I mean, if you think about it, you know, I mean, all I'm doing is, like, I'm a songwriter, and it's my job, you know, so I write songs, some of them mean stuff, some of them don't mean stuff, some of them are just sound records, some of them I want to get a message across. I think the very obvious message ones people get. The only political excursion I ever made in music was a song called Give Ireland Back to the Irish.
Give Ireland back to the Irish. Don't make them have to take it away. Give Ireland back to the Irish.
I wrote that the day after there'd been a big thing in Northern Ireland where some people had been killed and they were innocent people. And it was my government, you know, I felt very British and I felt my government was killing these Irish people. And up until then, I'd never thought of our government as being that kind of thing. It must be the same kind of feeling some people got when America got into Vietnam. You could say that Listen to What the Man Said is a religious song, but when I was writing it, I never thought of it as that. But a man could be Jesus, or it could just as easily be, I don't know, your father, or it could be your best mate, or it could be anybody, you know.
Anybody talking positive.
Yeah, you know, anyone talking positive is the man.
Paul McCartney reacts to the fans' demand for a Beatles reunion in the next segment of the Wings Special on KHJ.
One question that a lot of fans honestly ask themselves, is it possible to listen to any music by Paul McCartney and Wings and completely ignore the fact that McCartney was once a Beatle? And what about those persistent rumors about an eventual Beatle reunion? Can any true McCartney fan really shake that notion from the back of the mind, especially with the press reporting events like the gathering at Eric Clapton's house in May of '79?
No, we were just invited to Eric and Patty's, Eric Clapton and Patty Clapton's wedding reception. And so we all showed up and we were in a marquee and they had some microphones and stuff. And so a few people got up. It was me, George and Ringo. Is it a reunion, folks? And there was Denny, and there was Ginger Baker, and there was Robert Palmer, and
Mick Jones,
Eric Clapton. There was a bunch of people, you know. Was that it? No, there was Chaz and Dave, a great vocalist called Chaz. And, you know, it was just one of those things. Everyone just started jamming. It was mainly to get the kids off the mics. They were making such a row. So we thought the grown-ups could get up and make a worse row. And, you know, the newspapers heard about it the next day and said, wow, super reunion group. But it was actually just a crazy blow, you know.
McCartney reflects on the newest musical trends when we come back for the conclusion of the Wings Special on KHJ.
Any performing Paul McCartney has planned for the future is with Wings. Linda, Denny, Steve, and Lawrence will be riding high in current success until it's time to take stock of the coming musical wave, if that's ever possible.
When I was writing with John, my first songs ever, we were really trying to search around for what was going to be the next big thing because we thought we could get in on it. And the trouble was we could never find it. You know, we kept thinking, we'd read papers and they'd say Calypso's going to be the next thing, and then they'd say Indian music's going to be, whatever it was, you know, and we could never discover it. And it turned out we were the next big thing, which they called Merseybeat, and we could never find out what it was going to be, and it turned out to be us.
If anyone else besides Paul McCartney could claim such a fantastically successful and yet constantly changing musical career, it would still be impossible to make any kind of comparison. From young Liverpool toughs
And if you saw my love, you'd love her.
to groomed British heartthrob,
I love her. The long and winding road that leads to your...
from disillusioned and legally hassled superstar
We're gonna get high,
to satisfied songwriter and leader of Wings, Paul McCartney has, without a doubt, made a mark on the world that won't ever disappear. One last question. Is there anything, looking back on all the years of music and creativity, that Paul McCartney feels needs to be set straight?
The only thing about us is that because we got a family and we've got a kind of family-type life when we're not doing music, a lot of times in England we get pictured leaving from an airport with our family, and half the time that's all that people see of us. They just see us, and so the image gets out that we are just kind of family people and stuff. And while we are family people, it's not quite as much as the papers say, you know. I mean, we mix it with music and stuff. But no, there's nothing really I want to set straight. You know, it's near enough a skiffle.
Paul McCartney and Wings, Their Words and Music, was recorded in London with the interview conducted by Dave Sholin and Laurie Kay. Produced in San Francisco by Dave Sholin. Technical production by Ron Hummel. Script work, Laurie Kay. Executive producer, Harvey Mednick. The Words and Music of Paul McCartney. Copyright 1979 by RKO Radio.
This is 93 KHJ Los Angeles, keeping you informed and aware.